He thought she was just a janitor, quiet, precise, always listening but never speaking, until one night she looked up from her mop and calmly told him, "Dump Baxter Tech, buy Falcon Energy. Before tomorrow." The next morning, the market exploded, and that was just the beginning, because brilliance doesn't always wear a suit, and sometimes the person who knows what's coming is the one you never thought to ask. The office emptied slowly, heels clicking, zippers humming, coffee cups stacked in the sink like ceramic casualties. By 7:15, the only sounds left were the soft whir of monitors and the dull buzz of fluorescent light. Carmen Reyes stepped off the service elevator like a shadow. No announcement, no noise, just the subtle rustle of gloves and the quiet clank of her cart as it rolled across the tile. Her uniform was navy, 2 sizes too big, and her ID badge dangled low, never scanned for anything but access to broom closets and service hallways. She started with the glass doors. Spray, wipe, repeat. Behind her, screens glowed with red and green tickers, stocks falling, rising, falling again. On one screen, a panel of analysts argued over a late-day dip in oil futures. On another, a muted earnings call replayed from an earlier tech giant's quarterly bombshell. Carmen didn't look. She didn't need to. She'd already heard it twice on the lobby TV, and she'd noticed what most hadn't, how the CEO hesitated before answering the margin question. That pause meant something. She made a mental note. Down the aisle she went, moving past ergonomic chairs still warm from billion-dollar decisions. Each desk had its own identity. Stress balls shaped like bulls, coffee mugs with sarcastic quotes, charts scribbled on whiteboards with arrows and panic. None of it impressed her. She wasn't supposed to understand any of it. That's what they assumed. But Carmen had been cleaning this floor for 5 years, and for 5 years she'd listened, really listened, not just to the numbers, but the rhythm of the voices that spoke them. When someone lied, their breathing changed. When someone feared a dip, their sentences shortened. And when someone was bluffing, God, it was always the same twitch in the voice, the too casual laugh. She moved toward the back, wiping the glass walls of the executive suite. On a monitor left on, a headline scrolled across the screen. Baxter Tech faces scrutiny amid insider trading rumors. Carmen paused, eyes narrowing. She remembered a phone call one of the traders made 3 nights ago. After hours, too loud, too confident. She remembered the name, a rookie mistake. She didn't say anything, of course. She never did. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to sweep, mop, refill the soap dispensers. That was the job. But every night, when the last light went off and the city glowed outside those floor-to-ceiling windows, Carmen Reyes carried more than a mop. She carried patterns. She carried memory. And tonight, she had a feeling tomorrow would be interesting. Daniel Marks didn't usually stay past 7, but quarterly review season had teeth, and tonight, they were sunk deep. His office lights were the only ones left burning on the executive floor, casting long shadows across glass walls and polished tile. He leaned over his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot from chasing numbers that wouldn't sit still. Behind him, the soft squeak of a mop echoed like a metronome, steady, unbothered. He didn't turn around. Carmen Reyes had been part of the night rhythm for years. She was efficient, invisible, polite when spoken to, but mostly quiet. She made herself small. He'd always thought that was just who she was, until she spoke. "Falcon's due for a rebound," she said lightly, eyes flicking to his monitor, as she emptied the recycling bin beside his desk. Daniel blinked, looked up. "Sorry." She didn't repeat it, just gave a small shrug, barely more than a twitch of her shoulder. "That dip," she nodded toward the screen. "Temporary." He smiled, amused. "You follow the market." "I listen," she replied. "You'd be surprised what people say when they think no one's listening." He laughed, polite, if dismissive. He figured she must have overheard one of the traders, maybe parroted something. Falcon Energy had dipped 3% earlier in the day. There were rumors swirling. He had a note to sell if it dropped further by morning. Carmen didn't say anything else, just moved on, cart squeaking gently, as she disappeared down the hallway like a whisper never meant to be heard. The next morning, Daniel walked into the office, balancing a coffee cup and a stale protein bar, expecting to see red. Instead, Falcon Energy was up nearly 9%, overnight rebound. Asia's refineries had struck a new deal. By 10 a.m., it was the most talked about ticker in the building. Daniel frowned, leaned back in his chair, and stared at his monitor. Carmen hadn't guessed. She hadn't said it like a hunch. She'd said it like a fact. He told himself it was luck, coincidence, nothing more. But all day, her voice kept echoing in his head, calm and unbothered, as if she'd seen the page before it turned. That night, when the building emptied again, and the cart wheels rolled into the hallway, Daniel didn't close his door. He left the screen on, and waited. 3 days passed. Falcon faded from the buzz, replaced by newer noise, crypto rumors, biotech whispers, and a fresh wave of analyst tweets, dressed up as certainty. Daniel Marks moved on too. Sort of. He had meetings stacked like bricks, and barely enough caffeine to hold them together. Still, in the quiet moments, elevator rides, restroom mirrors, long walks to the garage, he thought about her. About Carmen. About that voice. That dip. Temporary. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it had, because she'd been right. Not vaguely right. Exactly right. And now something in him kept listening for her again. It happened next on a Tuesday. Daniel was walking back from a budget session, scrolling through his phone, when he passed her on the mezzanine landing. She was wheeling her cart past the atrium, eyes scanning a mounted news ticker above the elevators. Without turning to him, she said softly, "You might want to pull out of Dayford Tech before Friday." He paused. Why? She didn't stop walking. The patent delay won't be announced until Thursday afternoon. But it's coming. Daniel blinked. You sure? She finally looked at him. The engineer's brother works in the building. He vents to a friend on his smoke breaks, loudly. Then she pushed the cart around the corner and vanished. He almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he called his chief analyst, quietly, just in case. By Thursday evening, the news broke. Patent delay, lawsuit pending. Dayford tanked 12% in after-hours trading. Daniel stared at his screen, heart doing something it hadn't done in years, picking up speed from surprise, not stress. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled through his teeth, half smiling, half shaken. This wasn't luck. It wasn't instinct. It was information, filtered through ears no one paid attention to. Carmen wasn't guessing. She was catching what the rest missed. On Friday night, Daniel stayed late again. Not for reports, not for meetings, just to see if lightning could strike a third time. At 8:07 p.m., Ishi entered the floor like always. Cart steady, gloves on. No makeup, hair pinned back with simple clips. She emptied bins without a word, wiped down whiteboards filled with half-solved problems, picked up coffee cups still warm from egos and espresso. As she passed his open door, Daniel looked up. You were right, he said. Carmen gave a small smile. I usually am. He raised an eyebrow. How? She tilted her head. Everyone watches charts. I watch people. Then, with no further explanation, she moved on. But Daniel stayed still, staring after her. Because gut feelings don't hit with timestamps. And Carmen's did. It was nearly midnight when he asked her. The building was asleep, except for the low hum of machines, and the distant rhythm of elevator cables clicking like a second hand. Daniel Marks leaned against the glass wall of his office, coffee gone cold in his hand, suit jacket tossed over the chair behind him. He wasn't working anymore. He was watching, waiting. Carmen moved through the floor like she always did, efficient, invisible, unfazed. She didn't slow down for the executives' plaques, or the mahogany desks, just sprayed, wiped, and listened. He caught her near the coffee station, stacking discarded mugs onto her cart with practiced grace. She didn't jump when he stepped forward. She never startled. Carmen, he said quietly. She turned, calm as ever. Yes, sir. He studied her a moment. There was no smugness in her face, no agenda, just still water. How are you doing this? She didn't play dumb, didn't stall, just looked at him, eyes steady, and voice soft. Patterns, behavior, noise. He waited, brow raised. People watch numbers, she continued. I listen between them. She turned back to her cart, as if that answered everything. Daniel moved closer. You're saying you're not analyzing the data? No, she said, without looking up. I'm analyzing them. The people behind it. How they talk, what they don't say, how they breathe when they lie, where their eyes go when they think no one's looking. Traders leave breadcrumbs. Mr. Marks. Even the smart ones. He blinked. So you've just been observing. She finally looked at him again. For years, cleaning up after the people who move markets. They talk loud, leave documents open. Forget I'm there. He folded his arms. And you've been tracking all this in your head.
She shrugged.
Memory's like a muscle. Most people don't use it right. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. He'd sat across from MBAs, algorithm developers, behavioral economists. And here was Carmen Reyes, speaking like none of them. More precise, less inflated.
You ever think about doing this professionally?
He asked. I think about keeping the lights on.
Getting through the week.
He nodded, slowly.
I don't have a degree.
She added, as if preempting whatever thought might come next.
I didn't ask.
He replied. Silence stretched. Carmen glanced at the glass behind him, where the city blinked in quiet patterns. I don't predict the market, she said at last. I listen to the things that shake it. Daniel stared at her, the way you stare at a painting you've passed 100 times, until one day, you finally see what it's trying to say. Then maybe, he said, almost to himself, it's time someone else started listening to you. The post-it note was yellow. Standard. Unremarkable. Daniel peeled it from his desk 2 days after she handed it to him, holding it between two fingers like it might burn. On it, in neat block letters, were 5 words. Biomex will miss. Stock falls. No caveats. No hedging. No percentage ranges or jargon. Just fact. Written like weather. It had started as a test. Quiet. Off the record. He hadn't told the analysts. Hadn't looped in compliance. Just Carmen and him. In the hallway near the trading floor copy machine, where she happened to be wiping fingerprints from the buttons. Biomex, he said casually. You know the name? She gave the smallest nod. They've been louder this week. That's new. He raised an eyebrow. Louder. They bring in lunch now. Tense phone calls. Executive assistants triple-checking meeting times. And one of their legal guys left early 3 days in a row. Looking pale. Daniel smirked. You get all that from a mop bucket. She didn't smile. Just looked at him. You asked what I see. I see red flags. He paused, then reached into his pocket, handed her the post-it. Write it down. Your call. She did, without hesitation. Now it was Friday afternoon. The report had just hit. Biomex missed projections. Badly. Stock was down 14% before the closing bell. Traders were scrambling. Analysts explaining. Excuses pouring in from every screen. But Daniel wasn't watching any of them. He was watching the note. He turned it over once. Then again. It shouldn't have been possible. There had been no leaks, no early indicators. Their own biotech team had rated Biomex a hold, stable, reasonably insulated. But Carmen hadn't looked at balance sheets. She'd looked at people. That night she was back on her usual path, spraying windows, emptying trash. She passed by his door without a glance. Daniel stood slowly and stepped out into the hallway. I owe you lunch, he said. She stopped, turned. Excuse me, you were right. She nodded, like that wasn't news. He held up the post-it. How did you know? Really? She looked at it for a second, then at him. They were preparing to soften the blow. You can always tell. The sudden catering. The scripted body language. People get careful before they drop bad news. He shook his head. You're dangerous. Her voice was quiet. No, just observant. He stared at her, unsure what he was more impressed by, her accuracy, or the complete absence of ego behind it. Carmen adjusted her gloves, her eyes soft but firm. You don't need a title to see clearly, she said. You just need to stop pretending not to. And then, like always, she moved on. But this time Daniel didn't go back to his desk. He stood in that hallway, staring at the yellow post-it in his hand, wondering what else she could see that the rest of them never would. It started with footsteps. Not hers, theirs, the VPs, the managers who never worked past 6 unless bonuses were on the line. Suddenly they were lingering, forgetting things in conference rooms. Just grabbing a charger, stretching my legs, wanted to clear my head. But Carmen knew better. They hovered. They didn't say her name at first, just offered soft greetings, too friendly to be casual, too rehearsed to be real. You're always here late. Huh. Busy night. You follow the markets at all? She didn't flinch, didn't lean in, just nodded, smiled faintly, and kept moving. Her cart rolled between them, like a line they couldn't quite cross. Someone had talked. Maybe not Daniel, but someone had whispered. About the janitor who called Biomex before the bell. About the woman with no degree who apparently knew more than the interns with Ivy League debt. And once that kind of story starts, it doesn't stop. It slithers. By week's end, 2 more execs stayed after hours, just to bump into her. One brought coffee, another asked if she ever thought about expanding her role. She said thank you, politely declined, then emptied the bin by their desk and walked away. She hadn't asked for attention. She didn't trust it. Carmen knew the rules of proximity. Up close, people get nervous. They want to know your angle, your story, your worth. If they can't fit you in a box, they find a way to tape one around you anyway. So she stayed quiet. But she noticed. She noticed the tone shift. The way some started calling her Miss Reyes instead of hey. How the elevator didn't close as quickly when she walked toward it. How conversations paused, just slightly, when she passed. It wasn't hate. Not yet. It was curiosity. The kind that weighs you. Daniel didn't say anything at first. He let the noise build, watched it form like weather. Then one night, he caught her near the south hallway, restocking paper towels. She looked up, unsurprised. "You okay?" he asked. She gave a small nod. "I'm used to being invisible. I'm not used to being watched." He nodded, understanding more than he said. "They're sniffing around. I can smell it," she said simply. He hesitated. "She want me to say something?" "No," she said. Then softer. "Thank you. But no." Her voice wasn't angry, just firm. She wasn't shrinking. She was choosing her space. She picked up her gloves, adjusted the cart, and turned away. "They'll forget me again soon," she said over her shoulder. "Sheeple always do." But Daniel wasn't so sure, because what he saw in Carmen wasn't a flicker. It was fire, controlled, quiet, burning under the surface, the kind you didn't see coming until it had already changed everything. The call came through her earpiece, not over the intercom, not from her supervisor. Direct, personal. "Miss Reyes, Mr. Marks would like to see you in his office. Now, if you're available." She paused mid-wipe, hand frozen over a fingerprinted glass door. The voice was calm, polite, but something in it, something sharp, made her chest tighten. She peeled off her gloves slowly, tucked them into her back pocket, and walked the long hallway toward the top-floor suite. She'd passed that office 100 times. Never stepped inside. Today the door was already open. Daniel stood at the far window, hands in his pockets, tie loosened. He didn't look like a CEO right then. He looked like a man turning something over in his head, waiting for the moment it made sense. "Come in," he said without turning. Carmen did. Quiet, careful, like she was walking into someone else's story. He faced her, then gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Not a cleaning request," he added. "Just a conversation." She sat, slowly, back straight, hands in her lap. "I've been thinking," Daniel began, "about what you've seen, what you see, and how we've built this entire firm around analytics, but maybe missed the most human piece of it." She didn't speak. "I want to offer you something. Not a promotion yet, not a title, just a chance. Sit in on our afternoon briefings, listen, observe, tell me what you notice. That's it." Carmen blinked. "You want me in meetings, off the record, for now." She looked down at her palms, coal-used and dry. The same hands that had scrubbed grout, pushed carts, carried her through every hard year without complaint. And now he wanted to put those hands in the same room as portfolio managers and market strategists. She lifted her eyes, slowly. "I've cleaned floors my whole life." Daniel nodded. "And I'm not sure they'll listen to me." "They don't have to," he said. "I will." Silence stretched. He leaned forward. "You don't have to say yes now. But I see the way you read people, Carmen. You don't look at a screen. You look through it. That's rare. That's valuable." She exhaled, the smallest breath, like letting something go. "And what do I call this job?" she asked, voice quiet. Daniel smiled. "Whatever you want, for now just call it what it is. A start." She didn't nod, didn't smile, just sat there, steady as stone, weighing the invitation like it was heavier than gold. Then finally, "All right," she said. "I'll come. I'll listen. And for the first time in her life, Carmen Reyes didn't walk out of an office cleaning up someone else's mess. She walked out with the floor beneath her beginning to shift. They didn't say it to her face. Not at first. They said it in side glances, in the tightening of jaws when she walked into the room, in the way chairs shifted just slightly, as if her presence had adjusted the air, and no one wanted to breathe it in. It started after her third correct call, one that saved the firm a 7-figure loss. Carmen had quietly flagged a shipping conglomerate, whose CFO suddenly cancelled an overseas conference. Too quiet, she'd said. That kind of quiet means something's about to break. 2 days later, it did. Word spread, fast. Daniel kept inviting her back. She sat at the table now, not at the head, not at the center, but there, a notebook in her lap, pen uncapped, eyes moving from face to face as the room filled with financial forecasts and filtered confidence. And not everyone liked it. She's a fluke, one senior analyst whispered outside the break room. A parlor trick. This whole thing's a circus. She's not certified. Another muttered. You can't just let anyone into strategy briefings. I have a master's from Wharton. She has a mop. Carmen heard it all. Not because they said it loud. Because they said it wrong. In ways people only speak when they think their target isn't supposed to understand. But she understood plenty. She showed up anyway. Every afternoon. Same chair. Same calm. Same steady note-taking. She didn't interrupt. Didn't push. But when Daniel turned to her, and he always did, she gave her read. Clear. Specific. Unapologetic. This firm doesn't need gut. One executive barked after a meeting. It needs models. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Maybe it needs both. Some whispered that he was going soft. Others said he was trying to look progressive, play the diversity card, ride the optics wave. A few even suggested he was being manipulated. He ignored them. Carmen didn't. She carried their doubts the way she carried everything else. Silently, carefully, like another weight she'd been lifting her whole life. One evening after everyone left, she stayed behind, cleaning coffee rings off a mahogany table someone else forgot. Daniel passed her on the way out, briefcase in hand. She didn't look up. They'll never really accept me, she said quietly. He paused. Maybe not, he admitted. But you're not here for their approval. She looked at him then, eyes tired but clear. I'm here to be useful, and you are, he said. And then he left her there, wiping the same table she'd spoken truth from just hours earlier. Because Carmen Reyes had never needed applause, just the room, and now she had it. The charts were clean. Too clean. Carmen stared at the whiteboard in conference room 6B, while the team argued about sector rotation. Energy was up, tech was stalling, and everyone was fixated on a boutique hedge fund called Halberd Core. They'd made 3 surprise buys in 2 weeks, aggressive positions with barely a ripple. The analysts called it genius. Calculated risk. They're ahead of the curve, someone said. Carmen tilted her head. Something itched. She didn't speak during the meeting, just circled 2 numbers in her notebook, and underlined a date in red. Later that afternoon, as the hallway cleared and shoes clicked toward elevators, Carmen slipped into Daniel's office. He looked up from his laptop, immediately sensing her posture. Tense but measured. You see something? He asked. She nodded. Close the door. Halberd Core is holding garbage, she said. Wrapped in shine but hollow underneath. They're overexposed to shipping derivatives, backed by a Chinese supplier who's 4 weeks late on fulfillment. No one's talking about it yet, because they've been using shell buyers to mask the delay. Daniel sat up straighter. How do you know that? She met his eyes. Because one of their procurement managers has been calling our accounting floor by mistake for 3 nights straight. I answer phones when the night clerk leaves early. The same voice, same concern, different names. He blinked. That's not analysis. No, she said. It's a pattern, a crack under the floorboards. He was silent for a long moment, then leaned back. If you're wrong, we miss an opportunity. If I'm right, she said softly, we avoid a crater. Daniel stared at her. Halberd Core was a darling on the street. Betting against them wasn't just bold, it was borderline insane. You sure? He asked. As sure as I was about Biomex, she said. He let out a breath, not a sigh, an exhale, heavy with the weight of choice. I'll hedge quietly, he said. Just enough to cover us. No alerts. No noise. Carmen nodded. Thank you. As she turned to leave, he asked, Why now? Why speak up like this? She paused at the door. Because when it breaks, she said, they'll say no one saw it coming. I want someone to know I did. That night she stayed later than usual, not to clean, just to sit. She stared out over the skyline, as the lights flickered across glass towers, the city unaware of what was already unraveling beneath it. Because sometimes, brilliance isn't loud. It's a whisper in the right room, just before the storm hits. It started with a flicker, a quiet drop in overseas futures, then a blip in freight indexes. By 10:41 a.m., Halberd Core froze trading on 2 positions. By 11:02, the whispers turned into headlines. Halberd Core UN raveling. It moved fast, like blood in water. Their shipping exposure, just as Carmen warned, was hollowed out. A Chinese supplier defaulted. The derivatives were bad. Bad enough to take down 3 smaller funds and rattle a dozen more. By noon, the ripple hit hard. Rivals bled. Screens lit red across the floor. Daniel stood in the middle of the chaos, phone at his ear, eyes locked on the monitors. Around him, analysts barked into headsets. Interns typed like their keyboards were on fire, and someone in legal dropped a coffee without noticing. But the firm was calm, hedged, quietly, prepped days earlier, because Carmen had spoken, and he had listened. By close of market, Halberd Core was suspended from the index. Their CEO had disappeared from interviews. A dozen firms were in triage, but not Daniel's. His held the line, bounced, even gained. At 5:12 p.m., he shut his laptop, walked to the edge of the floor, and looked across the room. Carmen was there, quiet. Same gloves, same cart, same pace. She didn't say anything when he approached. He didn't either, not at first.
He just handed her the day's internal report.
She skimmed the first page, the hedge, the savings, the fallout.
You kept us clean,
he said. She nodded, handing it back.
You listened. He studied her face.
Steady as ever. No pride, no gloating, just that quiet way of standing, like truth didn't need applause. It just needed space. Wall Street knows now, he added.
You people are asking who saw it first. She looked at him. Let them ask. He smiled. You don't want credit. Not yet, she said. Credit comes with noise.
I'm not done listening, he almost laughed. Almost. Later that night, a Bloomberg segment aired. The firm that dodged the fall. Carmen's name wasn't mentioned, but inside the building it spread anyway. A custodian had read the market better than the market makers. Some were stunned, some skeptical, some furious, but all of them knew one thing now. She was real. The next morning, a printed note appeared on her cart. No name, no logo.
Just a sentence. You saw what we couldn't. Thank you.
She folded it once and tucked it into her pocket without a word. Because Carmen Reyes didn't chase titles or headlines. She chased patterns, and in a world that had learned to worship noise, she had become the signal. The climb had begun, and she wasn't looking back. The headline dropped at 7:03 a.m. Custodian who called the crash. The quiet genius inside Halberd's collapse. By 8:17, it was everywhere. Carmen's name, full name, was in print for the first time since her high school diploma. The photo they used was grainy, probably pulled from a staff ID badge. No makeup, hair pinned back, eyes straight ahead. She hadn't given an interview. Didn't need to. Someone leaked it. Maybe a junior analyst with loose lips. Maybe a board member trying to ride the wave. Didn't matter. The story caught fire on its own. By lunch, her inbox, one Daniel had set up just a week ago, was full. CNBC wanted a segment. Forbes requested a feature. 2 podcast producers asked for her origin story. A global investment firm wanted her to fly to Zurich for a private dinner. She deleted none of it, but replied to no one. When Daniel found her in the hallway, she was wiping down a keypad with the same calm, methodical pace as ever. He held up his phone, screen lit with notifications. You see this? She nodded. Someone talked. Everyone's talking, he said. She didn't look up. Let them. You're a headline, Carmen. No, she said. They made me one. He studied her a long moment. You okay? I'm not interested in fame. she said quietly. Fame fades, numbers don't. That night, 3 reporters showed up in the lobby. Security turned them away. One tried to sneak into the parking structure. Another called the janitorial service, pretending to be her cousin. Carmen clocked in anyway, worked her shift, filed her reports, sat in on the 3 p.m. briefing and flagged an oil company's sketchy shipping invoice structure before anyone else noticed the red flags. She didn't mention the article, didn't reference the cameras, just let the numbers do what they always had. Speak without ego, without fanfare, without needing applause. The firm buzzed with her name now. Elevators echoed with fragments. She was mopping floors last month. Did you read her breakdown of Halberd? Think she'll go public? Some smiled when they passed her. A few offered nods, hesitant but genuine. Others still looked away. That night, as she cleaned the top floor for what might be the last time, Carmen found a small envelope taped to her locker. Inside, a card. I was going to quit finance. You changed my mind. A new intern. She folded it once, tucked it into her notebook behind a market trend sketch she hadn't shown anyone yet. Because Carmen Reyes hadn't just survived the storm. She had forecasted it, quietly, precisely, and now the world was watching, but she hadn't raised her voice once. The sign was brushed steel, clean, minimal, mounted just to the right of the glass door on the 14th floor, the Rise Room Analytics and Behavioral Strategy Lab. No ribbon, no announcement, just a quiet shift, like a page turning, without a sound. Carmen saw it for the first time on a Tuesday morning, sunlight spilling across the hallway. She paused in front of it, not because she didn't believe it, but because she did, and that was somehow harder. Inside, the room had changed too. Gone were the sterile rows of charts and screens that used to drown in noise. Now there were whiteboards filled with real handwriting. Hers, mostly, a round table, sat in the center. Not a throne, not a podium, just a table where minds could meet. Her desk was by the window. It had a monitor, a nameplate. Carmen Reyes, behavioral market strategist. No longer facilities, no longer invisible, but she still walked the halls the same way. Quiet steps, shoulders straight, eyes that noticed everything. Some tried to read her like a symbol now. Others whispered like she was folklore. A few still looked confused when they passed her office door, as if waiting for someone to say it was all just a social experiment. She ignored all of it, because Carmen had work to do. The new role wasn't performative. It was earned. Within 2 weeks she'd flagged 5 misalignments in cross-border contracts that saved the firm over $3 million. She redesigned the pre-meeting intake process, for international calls, coaching executives on body language tells, tonal shifts, and cross-cultural faux pas. She wasn't just solving problems, she was changing the way they looked at them. Daniel stopped by one afternoon, with coffee in hand. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up from her notes. "I'm fine." He nodded, glanced around the room. "They're starting to understand. They don't need to," she said. "They just need to listen." He smiled. "You still think they'll forget you?" "No," she said. "Now they'll watch. Every move, every word. And that doesn't scare you." "It should," she said. "But it doesn't." She picked up her pen and kept writing. That week, 2 interns asked if she'd review their presentation slides. She did, gently, honestly. One left crying, the other beaming. Both said thank you. And that night, as she walked through the building after hours, she passed by her old cart, still parked in the janitor's closet, still labeled with her initials in faded marker. She didn't touch it, just paused, nodded once, and kept walking, not away from it, with it. Because Carmen Reyes hadn't erased her past, she'd rewritten the ending. If this story moved you, if Carmen's quiet strength reminded you that brilliance can come from anywhere, then don't let it end here. Share this video with someone who's ever been underestimated. Comment below who in your life sees what others miss. And if you believe we need more Carmens in every room, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true power stories that start in the shadows. Because sometimes the most important voice is the one we almost didn't hear.